You're listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast with Ken Lucci of Driving Transactions and James Blain of PAX Training. Learn how you can build a thriving transportation business with real profits, repeat clients, and enterprise value. And now for your hosts, Ken and James.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast. Unfortunately, today, I do not have my esteemed co-host, Ken Lucci. He is probably off doing an amazing deal, selling, buying, all those wonderful things that he does. I'm sure we'll hear about the amazing deal he's cutting right now at some point in the future. But I'm super excited today because although I don't have Ken, I have someone that I have actually known for quite some time. I've had the pleasure of working with him when he was on the ground transportation side. And now I'm really excited to see where he's going with things. I got to tell you, I'm going to use the introduction, right? So it's Dr. Umut Aslan from the Growth and Success Institute. Hey, bud, how you doing?
Good. How are you, James?
I'm good. I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about this because I remember when you were working in the family business and working together, implementing PAX, doing things there. And I'm pretty excited to see where you're at now. For those that don't know, obviously, give your family business the shout out. Tell us, how'd you get into the industry?
A great question. And how we started the business with my brother Salim, that was 2009. And Before that, we were working for a guy. I don't want to give him his name. Everything was being done under the table.
Okay.
It was not like professional, but it gave us like a learning platform to learn it. And I was also doing my master's in business administration. So something happened with the owner and my brother. And then my brother decided to part his way. And the owner a day later called me and said, I cannot keep you because you have your brother. And I said, okay. And interestingly, Salim always wanted to start his own business. In the past, he applied for a limousine company, a local limousine company in San Diego. They're not in business anymore. And they rejected him because of his age. And he tells me, hey, you know what? I always wanted to start my business in a limousine. What do you think? I said, fine, let's go ahead and do it. So this is how we started. We started with one vehicle in a short amount of time that we grew up to, I think in 6 months, 6 vehicles, and then things.
In 6 months?
6 months.
So what did you guys start with? What was the first vehicle?
It was a Lincoln Town Car.
Okay. And this is like 2009, so that makes sense.
2009. And then we had the second vehicle was an SUV. And that idea, we said, some of the people were asking, hey, do you have more than 4 people? And then we added the SUV. And then the reason behind it was because we could use the SUV both for as a sedan and also as an SUV.
Right.
Then I had a background in the corporate marketing. So I did some more like the marketing ideas that caught a fire. And also that was the moment of the Google starting it, becoming Google Maps, Google Business, web page. So that helped us a lot in a real quick, fast way that we grew up. And other things I knew, and Salim initially was resistant. I tell that people because now Salim doesn't want to get out of the events of the National Limousine Association or part of the peer groups, right? I said, let's go to do, at that time, it was LCP in Vegas. I said, let's go give it a try. He said, what are we going to do? We don't know anyone. I said, look, when I was working for a corporate, this is what we would do. We'd go to and then you learn, you meet people. It'll take you some time. After the first one, he goes to almost all of them. He doesn't miss anything. And actually, it's great because you learn, you meet people, you learn the deep details of how to run your business, and you meet people. Right. And one thing that this industry is different than so many different industries because there is a way that to share. You don't learn it maybe at first meeting, but when you keep going there, people, when you build connections, that they'll share, they'll help you to grow your business. Not like a pizza joint, you cannot that work together.
No, but I think one of the things, and this comes up on literally interview after interview, episode after episode, is that we see people that are able to find mentors, that are able to find people to work with, that are able to really go out there and network. One of the things that Ken and I say all the time is that the most backwards, the most ridiculous, the most poorly ran companies that we see are often kind of the little islands, the ones that don't want to go to meetings, that don't want to talk to anyone else, that don't want to figure it out, because they have to figure everything out by themselves. They don't have peers that they can network with. They don't have anyone they can work with. So I think that in my mind makes a lot of sense that early on you be going. Now I've got to know, and just out of curiosity, so you guys go to your first event, you go to your first LCT, you guys are building out the business. Is it MIB at this point? Have you guys, is that Men in Black, or are you guys flying under a different flag, or what does that company look like at that point?
It was Men in Black Transportation. And I think at that moment, it's just like I quickly wanted to go in there because I searched and I found it. Oh. And I remember so I think it was Jim Love. He had his own business in Bakersfield.
Yeah.
And we were asking him, hey, what do you recommend? The first question he asked, are you guys still driving? We said, yes. Get out of the driver's seat.
So 6 cars and you're both still driving.
At the beginning, you're doing everything to run the business.
Yeah. What changes at that point, right? Jim gives you this advice, get out of the driver's seat. What happens once you guys step out of the driver's seat? Now, you guys have this huge advantage, right? And that you've got 2 brothers running the business. Who kind of starts doing what?
So what we bring my sister, she is really...
More family, really, I love it.
Yeah, it's a family business. And what we decide, she takes over, we get her ready, we train her to answer the phones. And she's smart, she's intelligent, she is very detail-oriented. Salim is more like big picture-oriented. I am detail-oriented, visionary. And my sister is kind of integrated between us because I'm detail-oriented, he is a big picture guy. And then she comes in and she takes over the reservation, dispatching, and she learns real quick. And we start hiring people. So Salim becomes the finance and also the HR, and I become the marketing and sales guy that I go to the networking events. And at that moment, we start branching out more to the networking events in the industry, both of us. But at the same time, I branch out to the local associations to create like a MyB brand by networking. And also doing some activities like marketing, etc., in the local arena.
So this is 2009-ish. So that's where we start. At what point do you bring your sister in? Is that a year or 2 down the line?
I don't exactly remember, but it was quick.
Okay.
It took us a while to get her on board. Initially, we asked her to answer the phones. She was living in Turkey. She didn't want to come in here. So what we asked her, hey, at least can you pick up the phones while we can have a sleep? This is a 24 hours job. No. And there is a time differences in Turkey. So we initially convinced her, and then we say, look, the business is growing. Why don't you come here and join us?
So you actually convinced her to move from Turkey to the United States.
She's been here, a few times in the United States.
Okay. So what does that start to look like, or how does that start to shift and change for you guys? So now you guys have kind of got your visionary, which is your brother Salim. You've got yourself, which is kind of the integrator or the type A personality that's going in this detail-oriented. You've got the sister now who's running kind of the phones and those pieces. What does that now start to look like in terms of growth? Are you guys still staying on that same path of bringing on more SUVs? Or what is the business kind of start to become at that point?
It becomes to grow more faster, more vehicles. And I think in a year or so, we could even offer remember, this is the time that Uber was born.
Right.
And they even offered us to be part of it. And then the pricing were ridiculous. And I know some of the companies accepted it. And we said, no, we don't need you. We have enough business. We even have more than enough business that we can handle it, sustain it. And I think we grew up slowly up to 15 vehicles.
Okay.
With the sedans and SUVs. And we add along the way, I don't remember the exact times, but we also purchased a company, that local company, a limousine company with the 2 limousines. We added them to limousines into our fleet. And here comes 2015.
Okay.
Now we're starting like seeing the growth is going down.
Right.
If you remember, Uber is catching traction.
Yeah.
And everything that we're doing it not result in it. And we come up with the idea, okay, so we're doing whatever we need to do, but it's not like bringing results. We're not getting the results what we want to do. And then people are saying it, even the big corporations saying it, hey, I heard you, I love you, but Uber is cheaper.
Right.
I will only use you for the CEO or the top level executive. So, okay. And then we added minibus.
Okay. So you guys jumped straight to the larger vehicles.
Larger vehicles, yes.
And we're talking, 2015. So this is well before when we start seeing in 2018, 2019, a lot of the companies jumping up. You guys are getting way ahead of that. And especially being in California, I can only imagine the fun it was to try and jump up to that level. So what does that look like when you guys entered that first minibus? Was that something where Salim had the idea and then you went and implemented, or is that something that you guys came to together? What was kind of the catalyst that made you guys say, hey, we should go to this larger vehicle?
So one of the catalysts was like the efforts are not bringing any results.
Okay.
And looking at that how can we diversify, find the ways that to capture the customers. And some of our customers started asking, when they stopped using us in they were asking, hey, can you cover that? I have that many people. We added that's one of the reasons. And we wanted to be proactive. We didn't want to just sit there and see Uber taking us all of our like business share.
Right.
And we wanted to see where we can grab a customer. And think about San Diego. It's a group and convention center. That is it. Every month we have events that comes large groups into San Diego. So we said, let's give it a try. We know nothing about it, but let's give it and learn about it. So we started 1 minibus, then we added another 49 passenger bus. I don't remember exactly years, but also we added, then later on after two 49 passengers, we added larger buses, 57, 56 passenger super coaches.
Yeah, so you start making your way all the way up into the motor coach. And I think you've hit on something really important, and we talk about it a lot on the show, and that's you were listening to what your customers were looking for, but you were also mindful of how your city, how your area works. You know that you've got these large conventions coming through. You know that you've got that opportunity. Let me ask you, do you remember when you guys got that first minibus? Was that something where you guys were able to hit the ground running and you had it fully booked? Or is that something where you had to slowly try and build up the usage on it?
We slowly. Yeah. So some people there is a saying that build it, they'll come. Yeah. I think ours is kind of like that. Build it, they'll come. We got it in and then it's going to come in. And some people, what they do, different approach, is they wait, they measure how much the business they farm it out, and then they buy their vehicles. So 2 different approaches. When I speak to the other business owners and they would say, hey, I don't have the business. Yeah. Why would I invest in it? Rightfully, there is no right or wrong, but we took to, whether we call it the risk or initiative, to be able to start with that. And we were able to build it because of our current clientele, plus San Diego being a convention center. That gave us like the leverage to be able to add other larger vehicles.
Well, and I think what you're talking about there, right? You've got kind of that mentality of, I'm going to farm it out till I have the work and then put it in there. I think you guys saw an opportunity. You said, hey, we can get some work immediately. Then we can backfill. We can now start to move into that area. And so rather than trying to kind of get there ahead of time and then bring in the vehicle, you guys saw the opportunity to get the vehicle, start building out the work and kind of back yourselves into it, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
So where do things go right then? At that point, obviously now you become, a mixed fleet. You've got your motor coaches all the way down to the sedans. What starts happening, kind of the evolution of the company? And most importantly, let me ask you, having started, right, within 6 months, you guys are 6 cars. What kind of happens with the evolution of you and your brother as entrepreneurs and what you guys are learning and what you guys are focusing on? How does that kind of shift and what do you guys kind of become?
So every time that your company grows, you have to bring a different level skills. You have to learn, you delivering the service, but at the same time, when you grow up, you want your drivers or your reservation agent, your dispatch agent to deliver the same level of service. In other words, your values that you want it to be delivered, even if you're not doing it better than you.
Right.
Is in this case is then you're switching your skill level to be able to lead or show them this is what you would like them, and you would like their also input to be able to do it better than you do. One of the key things I think we had, one of our core values is it just like even sometimes the employees joked about it. I said, okay, it is like if like being on time is late. I understand that every company almost has it, but we were obsessed with it. One of the things that also we started early when the GPS is coming into the picture, I was like adamant that I told Salim, I want vehicles to be GPS tracked. There was a company from Florida, if you remember, it wasn't Verizon, it was a different company. They were super expensive. So I said, let's give it a try. This is like, I want to see it. And then this GPS would monitor you if you're on time or not. And initially, of course, there's a resistance. We're testing it, but the dispatcher allowed it. The system is not working, the GPS, they would call, hey, GPS system is down. I don't know how you guys were working. I don't know how we worked before, but it just drives me crazy. I cannot see the driver. And here's one of the things I would do initially, just to understand them that I'm crazy about like being a car earlier than the scheduled time. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the 4 a.m. going to the bathroom, right? I would call the dispatch, say, hey, are your drivers like early? She said, like, if she hesitates for a second, what happened? No, I'm just like, I was busy with something else. Can you make sure that your drivers are 15 minutes earlier? Even that sign being like early, on time is late, was everywhere in the bathroom, everywhere inside of the office. And me and Salim would continuously ask, the first thing, is everyone 15 minutes early? Are the old drivers dressed and they come into the office? And are the cars clean? Did they go clean? Did they cleaned up before? It may sound simple, but at the same time, it's not, because sometimes people don't want to do it, or they want to do the easier way. But if you tell them this is what we care about it, and these are the values that we want to deliver to the customer, they understand that. And when you grow up, that message gets distorted. So we kept that message in, hey, is everyone 15 minutes early? Are the cars are clean? The first thing that for me then on a daytime, after greetings, hey, can you tell me if everyone is like early? Are the vehicles clean? Is everyone dressed to the dress code?
No, I couldn't agree more. If you look, and obviously you guys have used PAX, so but if you look in our world, right, we have kind of this pyramid that you build up. And the very first part of that is on time, and early is on time and on time is late. And it's one of the things I think, especially for me as someone who, when I travel, when I'm doing anything, I am one of those people that it's not uncommon for me to run a little bit ahead of schedule and want to go somewhere here early. And I cannot tell you how many times, I've got a chauffeur that thinks they're on time, that shows up right at the pickup time, and I've already been standing there for 5 minutes, right? Because I knew what time it was. And, for me, it comes down to a generational thing. Because when I was growing up, I grew up with not only, no one in the transportation space, no family that did anything, but my dad had been a pilot in the Army. and my dad had then gone into the corporate world. And so literally my entire life, I was taught, if you're on time, you need to be there 15 minutes early so that when the button hits, you're already in the door. You're already there, right? If you're going for a job interview, that person should look out and see you there. And if you got to sit there for 15 minutes, that's fine. And the only place I've found that's a horrible idea is the doctors, right? Because really you're just going to sit there another extra 15 minutes. But guess what? That doctor's car should still be there 15 minutes early. So for me, I think that's a big thing in my mind, because the other problem becomes, if you're driving for a living like chauffeurs do, or even like motor coach drivers, anyone in this industry, if you're trying to get there right on time, any kind of traffic whatsoever is going to cause you to be late. And so, especially in your major cities, right? Your New York, LA, Chicago, Dallas, anywhere that's got traffic, I think trying to target that, you've got to learn how to work backwards. And you've got to then say, hey, if I'm going to be there 15 minutes early, I need to have a little bit of buffer time. And I think at least it sounds like you guys are similar to me and the way that we think in PAX, and that if you're not constantly thinking about it and you're trying to run on time, inevitably you're going to run late.
Exactly. 100% agree.
So let me ask you, as you guys have kind of grown and evolved, what does that look like for you in the business heading into now what's going to be? Obviously, we know what's coming now, but back then we had no idea what was coming around the corner with COVID and 2020. What does that kind of look like as far as where you're in the business and what that starts to look like as we start moving past 2015? You guys are now a mixed fleet, bit of a motor coach bus and still a sedan and SUV company. What does that kind of look like for you, and what does that kind of turn into? Where do you end up?
So I can see that the company right now, which I sold my share to my brother, I'm out of it. So out of the business, but I'm still involved here, kind of business coaching consulting with him. So I could tell you right now is like mostly the majority of the business comes through the large groups, and then small amount of it comes in from the sedan and SUVs, because the ground is shifting,
right?
And it's gonna shift a lot. And one of the things that I'm gonna like to mention it. So I did a research during my doctorate for business management and strategy, focused on more strategy. And I interviewed very successful business people that they grew up their businesses. And one of the things I know, one of my concepts came out of it. Some of the business owners, and especially in our industry, they're more focused on short-term planning, either day-to-day, monthly, or quarterly planning. And there were some of them planning for 1 year to 3 year planning. So one thing I would tell and suggest to people based on the data and experiences that I have, nowadays, people or the companies, organizations should look into a little bit further into the future and see what they can do, come up with some services. Right now, the Robotaxis are spreading out. Yep. And if people I spoke and some of the business owners that they shared that they use the Robotaxis and they even prefer a Robotaxi to have it for their kids versus a car with a driver.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because if you think about, some of the things that have happened in the rideshare world, I think we all saw the articles that came out about the sexual assaults and all the issues that they've had in kind of the rideshare space. I think if you can eliminate the person from that equation, obviously at that point, it's just you and the vehicle. At that point, the concern becomes more of the same as someone in a dark, dimly lit parking lot at night, right? You're safe once you get in the car, you just have to get into the car safely. And so I think that makes a lot of sense, and that if you can safely get into the vehicle and the vehicle gets moving, at that point, you're good to go. Now, I guess my question would be, as you're kind of doing this research, as you're kind of getting ready there, what is the big factor that a lot of these successful companies had in common in terms of their adoption of that kind of technology? Was there kind of a thread there that was common in terms of leveraging technology?
Not really, but like my research was trying to figure out the factors that help them to grow from
Okay.
a small vehicle number of vehicles to 10 or more vehicles. The common themes that came up, number one is networking at the national,
Yep.
like the industry association and local associations, and marketing. That was not one of them. And being part of integrated networking regularly with the people, whether in the industry or outside of the industry, and keep marketing it.
Yep.
Do the marketing continuous with the strong presence of website. Maybe we can integrate that as a part of the technology, SEO, and another part of it, but that's not enough. Delivering the service, providing the service, but not as a low cost provider. To be able to sustain it, the key is that companies should be able to deliver the service they promise, which was a clean vehicle, well-dressed chauffeur, and on-time vehicle. Plus, another key is who's behind the wheel and who's behind the phones that answering the phone to deliver the service when they call the customers. You can't believe sometimes if you call a certain companies, they still pick up the phones. Dispatch.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, look, when I first got into the industry, right, we were unknown. We had just come out, PAX was brand new. And I remember calling people and I'd hear car service. I'm like, oh, hello. Now that you've yelled car service at me, but it's true. There are still companies that I think that operate that way. And I think one of the things that we have talked about since the inception of PAX, and this is something I've been and will be adamant about, is that you have to be able to provide an experience to that passenger that is going to be different than the others that they're dealing with. So if your goal is, I'm going to compete directly with Uber, guess what? Unless you have the same convenience level of the app, the same availability as the app, the same on-demand experience, the same everything, you're not going to be able to compete with Uber. One of the things that makes rideshare work is they've got this national footprint. They've got this single application. I can call up and I can have someone here to pick me up in a couple minutes. What I can't do, though, is have that same level of expectation of service. My expectation when I go with rideshare has got to come down. The easiest way, if you're trying to lure people away from rideshare, is to make sure that you have people on your team that are literally blowing the doors off of the experience for that passenger. It's a pristine vehicle. It's someone dressed that looks the part. It's someone that understands, hey, I'm going to help you at the door. I'm going to help you this. They're, like we said, they're not right there on time. They're 15 minutes early. They're hitting their spot time. You're putting yourself in a different category. It's the same reason someone would stay at a Ritz-Carlton instead of a Holiday Inn Express. Holiday Inn Express has its place in the market, and so does the Ritz-Carlton. But if I'm going on a trip, I'm probably never going to go, my choices right now, I'm stuck between the Ritz and the Holiday Inn. I'm not sure which one I'm going to pick, right? They're different levels. And I think that says a lot to it. Now, I'd love to know, one of the things that we hear over and over and over from people that are successful in the industry is mentorship. When you were doing your research, was there any level of having a mentor or someone specifically mentoring them that came up? Or was it more so towards networking groups?
I'm going to tell you the one concept that networking at associations, and specifically many people share that the Limousine Association in LA shows that was big for them, plus the peer groups. That's one of the reasons that I embarked on the peer group. And so what people shared, that going to the industry show, that was for us same because we found some people to guide us, and we were part of Arthur Messina's peer groups. Me and Salim were at different groups, and that building that relationship, you build deep connections, deep bonding, and you can call, say, hey, guys, I need help. What would you do in this case? And imagine that also what it gives you an advantage because you're thinking from one perspective. But when you go to that peer groups or closer relationships, you have a smart people or smarter people than you there who has done the business before, or they're doing it, and then tell you, why don't you do that? If you're open to learn, and if you're open to be coachable, you can say, okay, let me see that. Can I implement it? An example that when you go to you start past business, right? You have no idea, but where do you get the customers? Google is money eater. Yes, Google has a portion will bring you, but not only will bring you, but there are another avenues. People tell you, hey, go to the colleges. An example.
Yeah.
Or do that. Have you done that? Or are you part of that associations that people are part of it? Okay. It just, you'll learn it, but you don't have to learn from the beginning. Try to find the invented tools. They already exist there. And you're having that, not only one mentor, you have like multiple mentors in your group telling you, guiding you to find you're running in issues. That you could say, hey, this is what I'm running. What have you guys done it? Have you ever experienced this one?
Well, and I think the big thing there, it's funny. So I was at a neighborhood block party the other night with my family, right? Every year our neighborhood has this block party. And I was talking to someone who had just started a business, nothing to do with transportation, nothing at all to do with our industry. But he started talking to me about marketing and, kind of what he was thinking and this person would give me this advice, this person would give me that advice. And I couldn't help myself immediately. It was, okay, well, tell me about your business, right? Once you're an entrepreneur for life, right? And so it was, all right, well, tell me about your business. And I quickly found out that, and this is true, I think, of a lot of different industries, there are no lack of people that are going to tell you what to do. They're going to tell you how to run things. They're going to tell you how to do things, that want to tell you everything without taking the time to learn about what you do, to learn about what your business is. And so through this conversation, I felt bad because I just, tell me more. Okay, what are you doing here? What are you doing there? What are you doing here? What are you doing there? Because I was trying to understand the business. And, after talking to him for a while, it was very clear that he had talked to some marketing people that were like, oh yeah, we're going to set you up on Google Ads. And you go talk to these people and talk to those people and do this or that. But what they hadn't done is they hadn't actually sat down and tried to learn the business to kind of figure it out. And I think one of the things that in our industry makes peer groups and the association events and all of these different things so successful is that you're there with people that are doing the same thing that you are. You're there with people that have been exactly where you are. So whereas for you, you may be buying your bus for the first time and thinking, oh, I've got this great idea. I'm going to do this and this and this. You'll have the opportunity to talk to someone that says, oh yeah, I did all of those things. That was a great idea. That was an okay idea. That was the worst day of my life. Don't do that one. Right. And so I think there's this huge value there in being able to do that. I think you can still move forward without it. But like I said, it's kind of like the companies that don't kind of leave their sphere of influence. They end up with their own kind of solutions they've had to fight and work for. So I guess the other question I'd have is, when you were doing your research, were there any other key things that stuck out in terms of the most successful companies as it relates to that space? Was there anything that kind of surprised you or you went, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that?
It's something that is the concept that I came in was, you sound simple.
Yeah.
But you think that even one of my chair commented, isn't that common sense? One of the things is keeping your company financially healthy.
Right.
Is you think that, but when you investigate, you're gonna see that some of the business owners, they only know about the profit, or they don't know the details of the numbers. What is the gross margin? What is the EBIT or EBITDA? So, and like we discussed about delivering the service, that's like no brainer, right? We say it's simple that you have to do that, but we experience working with an affiliate that they send you a crappy vehicle, a driver, you tell them, hey, I'm having large groups. I would like you to make sure that all your guys are dressed or vehicle are cleaned up. Guess what? It seems like the other company didn't hear anything from you. If you talk to certain providers in the net, they'll tell you how many times they burned out because of using an affiliate. Or some of the operators start entering the bus business because of level of service they received from the motor coach company. So they decided, you know what, screw you guys, I'm gonna buy my own motor coach and build my own businesses. That you hear that stories too. And it's all simple, being like a networking at the associations or local associations, being part of the group and delivering the service with the right pricing. But you see also at the same time, people price it so cheap and they cannot make it.
Yeah.
And keeping financially healthy. Recently, someone shared with me there was a guy that he purchased 4 vehicles and now he cannot continue his business. You cannot stay in it. And then when he was asked, why did you buy so many vehicles? And the answer is, I wanted to have a different variety. You wanted to have a different variety without like having enough business for each of them.
Yeah.
So it sounds simple, but when you look at it, the sharing that comes with from people, successful people, the biggest key is execution of that. What we think that is a common sense or simple ideas, to be able to make it reality, to execute them. And another one is constant planning. Some of them is focused entirely in the business, and some of them focus on strategic planning. But now, what I would suggest, based on my studies and what's happening in the industry or in all over the life, that change is rapid, is I think that Moore's law that mentions about the exponential change, right? So in this moment, companies should look also into the future. Okay, what's happening, what will happen, and how we can mitigate it, or how can we be ahead of the game when the Robotaxis comes in. Many people in the industry think that Robotaxi may kill the limo business.
You know, I will say, in my opinion, I think you've hit on a lot of things, and I want to take a second and try and unpack a couple of them, because some of the things you said early on are coming back now, and I think there's a lot here that's relevant. I think something you said early on, it's really important, is who you are when you're a one-car operator, as a person, as a leader, has to be different than who you are right now that you've got a larger fleet, or when you hit a larger fleet. And the way that I've always heard that, and the way that it was always taught to me, is what will get you to your first million is not what you're going to need to get to 2 million and beyond. Right? It's not the same in terms of where you're at, where you're focusing on. And I think what we see a lot is when you're that one car operator, you can be a lot scrappier. You can be a lot more out there. You can be in the car. You can drive, because at that point, you're kind of the business. And as you grow the business and you have to step up and you have to start delegating, pushing things out, you have to change. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, and I was having a conversation with someone about this, and then an announcement came out, is I think a lot of companies are already trying to see down the road and figure that out. A great example of that is the car rental industry. Look, when we get to the point where there's autonomous vehicles, we still have to have them cleaned, serviced, checked out, and put back on the road. Great news for mechanics. If you're a mechanic, guys, okay, you're good. You're good. Now, the difference is who's going to do that. So, if you've got Waymo operating a fleet, well, guess what? The rental car companies, and don't quote me on who it was, I want to say Hertz, but I could be wrong, have already stepped in and said, hey, we're going to clean, service, and turn around autonomous vehicles. So the autonomous vehicle will drive to us, we'll clean it, we'll service it, we'll take care of it, we'll put it back on the road. If you're thinking as a driver, if you're thinking as an owner, one of the things to keep in mind is I don't think we ever get to the Jetsons where we have Robot Betty, right? Zipping around with things. It doesn't make sense, right? If I think of, and look at the hotel industry. If you look at the hotel industry, when you go to check in, what is the base level check-in? The kiosk, right? The kiosk is the base level check-in. Now, who in their right mind is going to, you go to Vegas, you go to a large hotel, you go to the nicest hotel in New York. Do you expect that your highest customer service level hotel is going to have a kiosk? No, of course not. There's somebody there to welcome you to the hotel, right? To make sure things are taken care of, to be that face of it. And so I think it harkens back to what we talked about earlier of what is on time, what is appearance, what is a clean vehicle. Because if the base level of service becomes everything's automated, everything's a kiosk, everything is this and that, you then have this higher tier that becomes this is hands-on, this is white glove, this is what that might be. Because what we're seeing right now, even in regular rideshare, is if I order, your base level rideshare vehicle, they might send me a RAV4, right? Nothing against Toyota, love Toyota, but they might send me someone in a RAV4. If I order their premium luxury, their Chauffeur, they're basically sending me the same person, but that person's driving a Suburban or maybe an Escalade, depending on the market. The color of that vehicle is not going to define for me what the level of service is. My experience with that person in that vehicle is what's going to define it. And so I think it's important that when we're looking ahead, that you have to keep in mind that we're a service-based industry. So let me ask you, what are your thoughts in terms of what does that look like? Obviously you're out of the business with your brother, but you're still now coaching and you're doing development and you're helping companies. When you're helping them try to figure that out, what are you looking towards? What do you see as the opportunity?
One of the opportunities I see, I think similar to what you mentioned, there will be open up different opportunities like a fleet management of the autonomous vehicles, because I don't think either Google or Waymo or Tesla will want to manage that vehicles, running a fleet of vehicles that run around. That eventually that vehicles will be run down. Or imagine that also at the same time that even in taxis or Uber, people at least some of them, not all of them, will clean up their vehicles. But if you're running a Robotaxi all the time, who's going to clean that vehicle?
Right.
And at the same time, how long I don't know if these companies have the data of running the whole vehicle, mechanically maintaining it, what kind of maintenance needed, and then who's going to keep it clean? Who's going to keep it? Who's going to maintain it? But at the same time, I see people are crazy about trying to test them. I think I saw one article said one guy to try the driverless vehicle, he canceled all of the drivers, but just to be able to try driverless vehicle. But at the same time, there are people that they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel safe in it, whether the data shows that they're safer than the human drivers. But at the same time, people will want the human connection. That's what we all want. Everything when it goes to automated, people will still look for someone to drive them, also someone to experience or help them with. So there are opportunities. There will be opportunities. The niche will be smaller, but at the same time, for any company to be able to capture this, they have to look a little bit forward and then experiment with their ideas, come up with different ideas. During that talk, you mentioned that, cleanliness services or maintenance of the vehicles. What about for people, but they still want the human touch. They don't want to be driven, or they want someone to be present and then also handle their luggage bags.
Right.
So it should be, I can't tell you what the future will bring, but what I could tell companies who in the industry to keep looking, discovering or looking, exploring the opportunities that they could use with their own competencies in the business, in their own businesses. Because again, we always need like a human touch, human service. Some people will not give away that one. They'll prefer to interconnect or receive the human services, as you mentioned with the Ritz-Carlton.
Right. Well, I think the other side of that is I also would say, people talk about autonomous like it's happening tomorrow. I think, and again, we saw this happen If we start looking back through history, you saw this happen with emissions. You see this happen with vehicle safety features. You see this happen with all of these different major changes to transportation, right? The infrastructure is not there to just take every car off the road and have autonomous tomorrow. Obviously we're seeing these slowly deploying fleets in major cities. But the other thing is, if you start looking at providers in smaller rural areas, I don't know that it makes sense in the next 5 or 10 years for Waymo or autonomous to really kind of try and get a foothold there. And I think the other side of that is, as I mentioned earlier, knowing kind of the level that you're going to play at and the level you're going to provide service at. So I guess my thing would be, obviously we want to keep looking forward to that. What does an operator do today if, let's say you are someone that is looking to implement what we're talking about in terms of, I want to find a peer group. I want to get more involved with the associations. I want to kind of grow my business. I know that you are working on a project to kind of put some groups together. Can you tell us a little bit about what is it that you're doing and how is that an opportunity for someone to get that type of support that we've been talking about?
So as we mentioned, is like the key is to be able to find out the other people's ideas. Well, everyone has a different knowledge. Everyone has a different perspectives. And the key that in my project, the peer groups, other than one-on-one business coaching the peer groups here helps you to be able to learn from others.
No.
And not only one person. Even when you and I sit at any events that I learn from you every time I speak to you, I learn from other people. And I'm going to tell you something that one of the most successful guys in the industry, George Jacobs. So everyone knows him. And the funny thing he said, when I say I learn a lot from you, he said, I learn from you and I learn even from a smaller guy operations that the way that to learn it's not about size of the organization, but at the same time to be open and then ask the questions. Because everyone has a different, collecting different knowledge. But when we come together, and this is, I call it partially working on the business. When you are away from your operations, day-to-day business, when you get out of that daily huddles, daily challenges, and you sit with the like-minded operators, successful people, that you see something different. You're away from your own business, you're learning, you're building your knowledge, you're seeing something that you didn't catch or you didn't grasp it by talking to people. And also in that peer groups or what the expert speakers comes in from the industry, and whether it's technology, marketing, delivering the service, operations, you grab something that you can take out and implement it in your day-to-day real life business. And again, I keep saying that one, there's a Japanese saying that we're not as smart as all of us. So if you can elicit the wisdom of the group, that'll help you to take your business to the next level.
I agree entirely. I think one of the things that we have seen over and over and over with all the successful people we've talked to is that they are always very big to give credit where credit is due in terms of people that have coached them, people that have helped them, people that have taken them under their wing. I did a podcast interview recently on the Raise Up podcast with Charlie and Athena Grimm, which happened to be two of my mentors in the industry, right? I was lucky enough to have them at one of the shows, kind of when I was first getting in, say, hey, why don't you come to dinner with us? And that kind of blossomed into having mentors. And I think there's a lot to be said about being able to find the people that you can connect with and that get it. And to George's point, I think there's an opportunity to learn from anyone and everyone. It might be learning what not to do, or it might be learning what to do. But I think one of the things about learning that you've really nailed is that you have to be open and you have to be able to kind of see the lesson and absorb the lesson. I often find that the people that think they are the smartest in the room are usually the most closed off in the room. And usually the ones that are more willing to absorb everything are truly the ones that are getting the benefit. So let me ask, obviously you've got your groups that you're putting together. If someone's wanting to join one of your peer groups, if they're wanting to learn more about what you're doing, how you can help them, where would they go for that?
You can go to Growth and Success Institute. com, or they could, I think majority of the people are connected to me on Facebook. They can send me a message, or they can give me a call and my cell phone if they want to talk more about it.
All right. So you guys heard that. Connect on Facebook. I'm guessing they probably connect on LinkedIn as well.
Exactly.
Growth and Success Institute. Now, let me ask you, how often are your groups meeting? How often are you having these peer groups?
So we're having it 3 times in a year. Yeah, 3 times in a year.
And can you tell us a little bit about what does that kind of entail? Is that something where they're flying in? How do they get involved with that?
So another key factor, and especially in person versus in Zoom or virtually, you see the operations of another operators. Like our first meeting will be in San Diego. So we're going to visit Men in Black Transportation. The key is when you come in here, you step into the other operator's place, the running, or let's call it business or house, that you see how they're managing it. And when you see it, you see the way that they're managing it. Is it something that you can adapt it? Or you may see they're doing something that you may take and implement it. Of course, you're not going to take anything just to look at it, but you see you can adapt it and then take the idea and implement the businesses. And also, you have the opportunity to talk with the employees, ask them questions. What the challenges are you facing? Are they similar to your challenges? Another learning opportunity, seeing how they're designed their operations, how are they running their operations, and who are behind the scenes, what are they doing it? And when you ask people that their opinion, people love to talk. They love sharing. They love sharing their expertise, their information. As wherever you go, people love to help other people. I think helping other people is innate, expression of love that we show we care about the people. And when people come from different part of the transportation companies, they're not competing, confidential. People open up, tell, hey, this is what I'm doing it, and I'm gonna give you our sometimes people call our sales director, the MIB sales, and ask her what she's doing and how she's doing it. And she tells me she loves sharing it. Hey, are you doing this? Are you doing this one? And you're coming here, you're getting a free real life that is proven to bring the company to a certain level for free. That's priceless.
Well, and look, I am fortunate enough that kind of in my role in training, I get to travel the country and I get to do site visits all the time. I have lost count of the number of operations that I've been to. And what I found is that there doesn't seem to be, there's things that they have in common, but if you go visit 100 operations, you may see 100 different ways to do things, from something as simple as how we store the keys, how they check in, to something as complicated as, hey, here's our maintenance schedules. It's very eye-opening when you get to go to operations and do that, because one of the things that I found is, like you said, almost all the operations are very forthcoming. Because here's the thing, the little battles are just as important as the bigger battles in certain places. But if I'm coming to visit you from another part of the country, the way that you organize your fleet in the parking lot is not necessarily going to affect if I take that and I apply what I've learned. But the other thing that I've seen happen, and I've watched these conversations, is I've watched someone on a site visit say, hey, that's really neat. Why are you doing it that way? Oh, well, we do it this way because of this. Oh, well, we do this. And then the next thing you know, they've shared the information. They've each shared a piece that brought them further to where they want to be. And the next thing you know, both sides have been able to improve their process, whereas they never would have seen it. They never would have shared it. They'd have no idea how they do it. And so I have to say, for me at least, I think that's one of the neatest things about getting to do site visits is you get to find out those pieces that are the things that we see every day that no one else probably ever gets to see. So obviously the first one's in San Diego. When is that one going to be?
It's going to be in December. First week of December.
All right. So you guys, first week of December, if you are looking for a peer group, I know somebody. No, but more importantly, I think the big thing here is this really ties into what we've talked about almost since the inception of the podcast. And that's that having mentorship, having somewhere where you're going for knowledge, getting to be able to hear the different opinions and see the different ways that things are done and kind of interact with the others in the industry is truly something that gives you an edge. I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. One last time, where is it they can go if they want to sign up and learn more?
So they can, if they want, I'll give my cell phone, 619-723-8104. They can text me, call me, or they can go to the Growth and Success Institute, or I can give my email, Umut, U-M-U-T, at growthandsuccessinstitute.com. And you could find me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hopefully you've liked and subscribed. One thing worth noting, if you love what you're hearing, if you want to hear more, drop us a like, drop us a comment. Let us know what we can do to help you guys get the support you need from the podcast. And as always, thanks you, everybody, for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about PAX Training and to contact James, go to paxtraining.com. And for more information about driving transactions and to contact Ken, go to drivingtransactions.com. We'll see you next time on the Ground Transportation Podcast.